So I thought I would get you to think about ethics. So are M&A, mergers and acquisitions, good for society? So I think there's lots of things we could discuss here. Obviously, I'm an M&A integration consultant, so my personal belief is that M&A is good for society. But that's a discussion that we can have. So I think let's first think about the non-profit sector. And we could look at charities and hospitals. So I've sat on the board of a large charity, and charity integrations and mergers are done in a slightly different way. They may be forced through by government. We look at various different government sectors. We can think about them as potentially not being particularly efficient. And so one way of trying to make them more efficient might be to force some of them to merge. Now, this may or may not be called M&A. We may use other words for consolidating, let's say, a set of hospitals in an area. We may be thinking about police forces or schools. We might just think about procurement across local councils or local government. If we think about a particular country and we think about the pens that all of those people work. So if I look at the UK, there may be many millions of people that work for organisations funded by the government. Well, could we procure pens for all of the hospitals, all the police forces, all the fire brigades, all of the schools, and all of the government departments centrally and locally? Could we procure pens in one sort of way and therefore reduce the cost of pens to those millions and millions of people? So the obvious answer is yes. And now, whether we call that a consolidation of some sort, whether we say the government runs that, or whether we say locally we run that, or we run that in the sector. And this is obviously a discussion that goes farther than just M&A. And we might think of people on the left and people on the right. And we might discuss how this should be done, how this should be ethically done. And people on the left and right side of the aisle might have different words and different opinions. But certainly, if I come at this from organisations in the non-profit sector becoming more efficient, and so if I look at charities, the discussion in the charity was how can we make our charity more efficient so that the funds we raise go to the end cause. So in making the charity and the charity sector more efficient, more of the money gets to where it should be going. Now, most people would say that's a good thing, although I obviously run into people that would disagree with that. So there's lots of things to think about here in the non-profit sector, both in charities and in government-run organisations or government-funded organisations. And we quite regularly use the words M&A, but we quite regularly use other words. So very, very interesting discussions to be had here, I think. If I now move to the for-profit sector, we do have M&A, and obviously this does vary from country to country and geography to geography, whether we're looking at Asia, China, Europe, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, or America or South Americas. There's different countries, there's different rules, they're part of different organisations, they take different viewpoints. We've got cross-border M&A, which brings into account monopolies and mergers commissions in various different jurisdictions. And we've got various different laws and rules and regulations, as well as currencies and different tax rules. So this can become very, very interesting when we start to think of M&A and the ethics of M&A. So let's just start to think about some very basic ideas and think about the pensions. So people within the company, employees may have pensions or not, and M&A will affect that. And I might think of pensions in another way. So for some of the for-profit companies are listed on stock exchange, and so those might be investments in pension funds. We all get paid a pension, so I have a pension, as do you. And that pension is invested in some way, either through stock markets or through bonds, which may be issued by these companies. Or companies might be private and therefore may be invested in through angels, through investment vehicles like VCs or private equity, or through pension funds. And so to a greater or lesser extent, we're all affected by these. And so the discussion of companies go through a life cycle, like there's a product life cycle, there's a company life cycle. Companies grow, and some of the companies, as they grow, they buy other companies, which enables them to grow faster, better, become more efficient. And some of the larger companies, as they're late in their life cycle, 100, 200 years old, maybe in a larger industry that's old, and some of the businesses are now failing as technology comes through and changes the environment they're working in. So can M&A enable some companies to generate profits for a longer time and so be better investments and help us? And so this is really the discussion that becomes, from the obvious discussion of, well, if we were to buy a company and we were to lay off 5% of the people, is that bad for those people? Well, in some cases, yes. Those people struggle to find jobs in certain areas, but in plenty of areas, those people find jobs, and it's actually they get better jobs, and it's not a problem. So do we think of the ethics of M&A in the actions we do or the outcomes for individual people? And do we, when we think of the ethics of M&A, are we thinking about individuals in the company, employees? If we have 100 employees, is this better for 95 employees and an adverse effect for 5? How do we view that? Is this better for customers? So in certain countries, we would think of capitalism and the concept of M&A leading to reduced cost and better products for customers, better service, and therefore being good. Whereas in other jurisdictions in the world, it may be thought of as not so good. So really, this is a very interesting discussion to be had, which can be thought of as in political way, because obviously we need to make rules to govern this in our particular country, and obviously the press and the way we discuss M&A, some M&A is portrayed as good, and some M&A is portrayed as bad. And so really this will come to an interesting ethical discussion on what you view M&A as. There's obviously many different types of deals, different types of structure in different countries and jurisdictions. And so the discussion around what is good and bad is quite philosophical and is an ethical discussion. So whilst I think that M&A is good, I've obviously done M&A in all sorts of different sectors. When I've done M&A in non-profit sectors, quite regularly it's not necessarily even called M&A. And certainly when we think of various different countries nationalising things, we might think of that in an M&A sort of way, although that would never be called M&A, but similar sort of concept. And so suddenly it becomes a very interesting discussion when certain people might say, well, M&A is bad, let's nationalise everything. And then actually when we get down to the nitty gritty of what we're actually doing and how that works, we are affecting people's investments now and in the future. We're affecting the money that people spend, their tax dollars and how that is spent and how that works. And the discussion of what should be held in private hands and what should be held in public hands. So quite a few interesting discussions to kick off, I think. And I'll certainly be interested in your comments and thoughts, and always happy to speak. My name's Danny Davis. I help plan and run the European side of a $6 billion deal, 30 work streams in 30 countries. I wrote the book M&A Integration, How to Do It. You can see it here and find it on Amazon. I've been a guest speaker at London Business School for more than 2 decades on the topic of M&A integration. I consult, I coach, I teach, I train M&A integration, both pre-deal and post-deal. Here's my email address and my phone number. Send me an email. I look forward to talking to you.